So 2021 is shaping up to be one of the most expensive years for an Apple enthusiast like myself, because of course, in terms of Apple Silicon Macs alone, we have the new redesigned iMacs and of course the MacBook Pros to look forward to. But of course, as per tradition, Apple has one more thing up their sleeve, and when I say one more thing, I mean three more things, because Apple has a new version of the Intel MacBook Pro. You heard me right. We also have an Apple Silicon version of the Mac Pro alongside it, and possibly a much awaited successor to the Thunderbolt Display. So yes, it really seems like Timothy is making our dreams come true, and so let's delve into these pretty exciting rumors. Make sure to like and subscribe, click that bell notification for the latest Apple rumors and leaks, and with that being said, let's just tuck in. As per usual, this report comes from Mark Gurman, an ever-reliable source in the world of Apple leaks, so yes, we can take this information with some credibility. Anyways, delving right in, let's address the elephant in the room, and that is this supposed new version of the Intel Mac Pro. So to many of you, I'm assuming this is very odd because of course Apple is charging ahead with their transition to Apple Silicon, and so why would they even bother giving us another Intel machine? Well, believe it or not guys, but Apple Silicon is actually not entirely perfect. I know it's breaking news, but Intel has a slight advantage over Apple Silicon in terms of two things. Number one is graphics. So of course Apple shows their prowess with their CPUs. Their CPUs have been incredible, but in terms of GPUs, we're really not sure as to how good Apple Silicon will be. Of course, we have heard plenty of rumors in the past about Apple working on GPUs with up to 128 cores to be several times faster than their AMD equivalent. But ultimately, I feel like those are long-term plans. I don't see that happening anytime soon. And so, for the time being, proper professionals need some sort of update to the Mac Pro, and so of course Intel has the advantage where it supports a wide range of existing GPUs. Number two, this is the big reason, Apple Silicon is of course a new platform. It's based on the ARM architecture, whereas of course Intel is based on the tried and tested x86 platform. And for a lot of professional environments, they obviously depend on very, very expensive software, plugins, and hardware that rely on the older platform. And so it will take a while for them to transition to, of course, Apple Silicon. And so for this interim period, they've got to give the professionals some sort of updates, and so giving them one final Intel Mac Pro does make a lot of sense. Now, I really haven't been keeping up with Intel and what they're doing because I don't care, but I'm assuming Intel has some sort of successor to the Xeon chip in the Mac Pro right now, and so I'm assuming that'll debut on the 2021 Intel Mac Pro. As for other changes to this Mac Pro, there won't be any. It will literally be the same Mac Pro we have right now, except of course, newer chips for slightly better performance. In fact, I can see Apple just randomly dropping this on their site one day because honestly, I'm not sure Apple wants to showcase this at an event, and so yes, it will be a pretty low-key refresh, but again, to that niche professional market that needs Intel for this transitional period, then yes, Apple will serve you guys with another Intel Mac Pro. But of course, that doesn't apply to everybody, and so Apple is working on a Mac Pro to sit alongside this Intel version. So we've heard plenty about this in the past. It's essentially going to be a half-sized Mac Pro, and now we have some further details on the design from Mark Gurman. So Mark Gurman tells us that this Mac Pro is going to be based on the Power Mac G4 Cube. Now this is really interesting because I've never seen Apple reuse an older design, except of course if they're saving money like they do on the iPhone SE and the iPad. But of course what I mean here is Apple reusing a really older design from, of course, the early 2000s. A lot of this is very odd to me because as far as I can remember, I don't think Apple's ever kind of pulled the nostalgia trick on us. I've never seen them take a retro design and bring it back into the modern age, and so this will be something of a first. I am looking forward to this. I think this would be great, but we shall see if it's going to be based on the original design or if it's going to be an exact replica. Now, the main question for me with this Mac Pro Mini is upgradability. Will this Mac Pro be just as modular as, of course, the 2019 model we have right now? Now, the original Cube was pretty easy to open and you could, of course, upgrade things, so Apple could, of course, take this new design in a similar route. But, of course, the issue we have today is PCI slots is not compatible with Apple Silicon, at least with the M1, and so I am assuming it is pretty much confirmed we see some sort of new version of Apple Silicon chips debut on this Mac Pro that will have full support with PCI slots, and so yes, we should be able to upgrade the RAM, the storage, and possibly even GPU with this Mac Pro. Now, the only issue that could arise from Apple Silicon and expandability on the Mac Pro is maybe a lack of efficiency. So we all know how the M1 is super efficient because it has the RAM, the GPU, the Neural Engine all built in one package. It's why it's so great and it's why it's blown away the competition. However, with the Mac Pro, because it's modular, Apple will of course have to compromise on efficiency, and so a part of me does think that maybe Apple could lock this down like they have of course with the rest of the Mac lineup. I think that would put off a lot of professionals. We'll have to wait and see, but hopefully Apple can sprinkle some of the Apple magic and balance efficiency and modularity. So yes, pretty exciting stuff, but let's now talk about the chip briefly because of course we are in for some pretty insane stuff when it comes to the Apple Silicon powering this machine. So I have mentioned this in the past, you can check out a video about it in the icon above, but essentially Apple is working on chips with 32 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores for potentially the highest end machines. Now, of course, I am unsure if this is going to be the chip that powers the Mac Pro Mini because technically the Mac Pro Mini isn't Apple's highest end machine. That's still the Mac Pro, and so maybe we'll see some sort of watered down version of that chip in the Mac Pro Mini. Though that shouldn't really be an issue, to be honest, because of course we've seen what Apple is capable with the M1, and so even with 16 cores, maybe even with the 16-inch MacBook Pro or the iMac chip in this Mac Pro Mini, it should be incredible, and expect the performance to be absolutely superb. We should have no issues. As for the GPU, as I mentioned before, Apple's working on GPUs with up to 128 cores, and again, because that's built for their highest end machine, I think we'll see something like 64 cores for this Mac Pro Mini. Now, in terms of other details, such as, of course, how much RAM, how much storage, how much I/O will you be getting on this Mac Pro Mini, I think we'll share pretty much all the options you have with the current Mac Pro. So yes, that is the Mac Pro Mini in a nutshell, but of course Mark Gurman conveniently leaves out price and release date once again, so let's theorize what that could possibly be. So release date, I think the Intel version, of course, as I said, will drop sometime in 2021. I think that makes a lot of sense. But the Mac Pro Mini with Apple Silicon, I think that's going to be happening sometime in 2022. But I could see Apple giving us a sneak peek or maybe unveiling the Mac Pro Mini at the dedicated Mac event that happens in November, and then of course releasing it to the public in early March of 2022. As for price, I think because of course Apple saves a ton of money with Apple Silicon, and of course this technically will be a watered down version of the Mac Pro, even though the chip will be insanely better than Intel, the price should be much cheaper, and I think that it should fall in between the Mac Mini and the Mac Pro, and so I'm thinking around $2,000, $2,500. I think that makes a lot of sense, and yeah, I think that will be a pretty solid price. Now, of course, Timothy hasn't just finished there because he has one more thing to unveil, and that will be the ThunderBolt Display 2021 edition. So the last ThunderBolt Display released all the way back in 2011. I can't believe it's actually been that long. But anyways, if you don't know, the ThunderBolt Display is a price-friendly version of the Pro Display XDR. So of course, that display is $6,000. It's clearly for professionals, and the ThunderBolt Display was for consumers, and so it was $1,000. It was 27 inches. It had a really nice design, and then one day in 2016, Apple just killed it and replaced it with LG's ultra-fine line. Now, of course, the LG displays are apparently pretty decent, but they won't be as good as Apple's first-party option, and so I am glad that Mark Gurman thinks the Thunderbolt display will make a return in 2021. Now, in terms of specific details regarding this successor to the Thunderbolt display, we don't know much. So he says it's going to be a cheaper version of the Pro Display XDR. We kind of figured that out. So I'm assuming, much like the 2021 iMac, this is going to be based on the design of the Pro Display XDR, but of course, we'll have slightly worse tech to make it more accessible. In fact, Mark Gurman specifies the brightness and the contrast ratio of the top tier Pro Display XDR won't be in this Thunderbolt display, and honestly, that's not a huge con because I think 90% of what that display is capable at, of course, a cheaper price will still make a pretty good display. Now, the folks at Takara claim Apple is working on a 27-inch mini LED 5K monitor, and so that seems to be what this possible successor to the Thunderbolt display could be. Now, in terms of other specs, price and release date, we as usual have nothing, so yes, we have to wait for more info regarding that, but I think the Thunderbolt display at some sort of November event makes sense, and maybe it will retain the same $1,000 starting price it had back in 2011. So yes, that is pretty much all the big upgrades coming to Apple's professional Mac lineup, and obviously I won't be able to afford any of it, but I'm assuming a lot of you guys with deep pockets will be looking forward to these big changes. And yes, I am looking forward to seeing those pretty insane Geekbench scores from this supposed M3 chip. But tell me in the comments below, are you a fan of Apple invoking nostalgia and bringing back older designs from the past? Because personally, it feels like something Apple wouldn't do, but we'll have to wait and see. Tell me what you guys think though in the comments below. And on that note, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click that bell notification for the latest Apple news and rumors. Check out a video here in the icon above about the iMac redesign happening also very soon. And on that note, I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya, peeps.